everyone. I'm Rejoice on Umatta Consultant Podcast. If today is your first day on our show, please make sure you subscribe to our channels, especially Spotify. Today we have the special privilege of speaking with Michelle. Michelle is the owner of Flower Girl Cafe and also Connecticut's 2025 Small Business Person of the Year. We're very happy to have her here, and Michelle would love for you to introduce yourself as you see fit, and it will go right
Thank
into the
you. So
question.
my name is Michelle Nicholson, and I own bakery and cafe in Hebron, Connecticut called the Flower Girl. And yeah, I'm excited. I'm 2025 Small Business Person of the Year. It's been a crazy month.
Absolutely, absolutely. Congratulations on that achievement, by the way. Our
Thank
first
you.
our first question for you, could you take us back from your porch? What inspired you to start baking? And did you ever imagine that it would be a multi-location business today?
Yeah, absolutely. So no, of course, I had no idea that this was going to turn into what it is. When I started baking, it was really just a hobby. I was trying to learn how to make sourdough bread. I had never made it before. I really, really wanted to make my own starter and learn how to do it from scratch. I had been visiting King Arthur in Vermont, up in Norwich, and when I had gone to visit the facility, they have this big, beautiful kitchen in the center that has like all glass around it, and the bakers are in the middle in sort of a fishbowl making bread. And I remember going in and seeing them and just thinking, like, oh, I really would like to try to do this. So I went home and I created my own starter by harvesting wild grapes from the backyard at my house here in Connecticut, and used that to start my starter. It took me, oh, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3 weeks to make the starter active. And then I made my first loaf of bread with it. It was horrible. Just absolutely disgusting. And because I was so bad at it, I was very frustrated, and
Hmm.
I decided to continue working at it. So I did that quite obsessively for about a month or two until I got really good at making the bread. As I got better and better at it, I had more of it just hanging around my house. So I created this little teeny Facebook group with my friends in it, maybe 7 or 8 people, called the Porch. And when I had an extra loaf of bread, I just posted a picture of it, and whoever was around, out and about in town, would swing by and grab it for free off my front porch and take it home. It wasn't too long before they started asking me if they could buy it. So I went about the process of getting a cottage food license, and that was really how the business part of this started. Was
Amazing.
just me creating this little LLC so that I could sell a couple loaves of bread a week off my front porch.
Exactly, exactly. Amazing, amazing story. You never know where an idea or a small initiative can take and expand to other people. What
For
what
sure.
what role did community play in those early days as you think about it? And how did you build trust and loyalty within, with or without a marketing budget?
So, the community is something that I talk about a lot when I'm discussing my business and the growth of my business. The community was the entire growth of my business. So, because of the fact that I was, this kind of grassroots accidental business, the fact that we grew it all is because the people that were in that very first group went from 7 people to 14 people to 50 people to 100 people, and that was just all word of mouth, which is essentially, the meaning of community. Is this These people are telling other people about this kind of hole in the wall concept of just placing an order online and picking up a loaf of bread off of somebody's front porch. It is before the sourdough craze of COVID. So people were not making sourdough at home at that point. It was something
Mm.
that, I mean, some people were, but it wasn't as popular as it became. And the community really just kind of rallied behind the concept of this homegrown business and this grassroots business. And then, of course, the timing of everything was incredibly unique. I had just set up this contactless delivery system for bread about 2 months before COVID.
Right.
So when COVID came about and all of a sudden people couldn't get bread and they couldn't get flour and they couldn't get yeast and they couldn't really go anywhere, I had already accidentally set this up and people could just order bread from me and pick it up and not see anybody and be low risk for the virus. And it really just spiraled into what it is today. And that's really been the way it has been for every step of it. So when I couldn't bake out of my house anymore because I had outgrown the space and I was kind of panicked about the whole situation, the community that I had built on Facebook were the ones that found me another place to bake. They're the ones that made the phone call and said, like, to the church that I ended up going to, and said, will you take this baker in? We're members of this parish. Like, we've been here for a long time. We want you to do this. And then once I was in that church community, it was that community that connected me to the people that were building the building that I would eventually occupy. So they connected me to this couple who had just built this building that was dilapidated in the center of town, and said, like, we think you should talk to each other, and we did, and it turned out to be a great match.
Right.
So then when we were starting to build the bakery, it was the community again that brought me to the owner of the cafe that was right next door.
Right.
Because people talk, and they said, oh, the girl that's buying that bakery, maybe she would want to do the cafe too. So when the owner of the cafe called me, she said, people said I should call you and see if you wanted to buy this cafe, which I didn't really, but it's so close by. It's right next door, and it really, everything just ended up falling into place perfectly. So
Exactly.
but the community was everything. They were the word of mouth, they were the marketing, they were the advertising, they were the connections. Eventually they were part of the funding. They did a crowdfunding campaign for me, raised $14,000 in 48 hours. I mean, and now they continue to be the basis of our support because they're our customers.
Right. It's such a phenomenal story how everyone came together in the midst of COVID, also supplying what people need, and carrying the torch is amazing. What's a decision you made early on that, looking back, changed everything for you? You're like, this was the epiphany of everything that you did, even if it didn't seem important at the time. What is that one decision?
So it was probably I can kind of pinpoint two different things. The purchase of the cafe, of course, was pivotal, right? Because that, had I not purchased the cafe, we would not have the compound that we have today with all of these different buildings and functions. But really, early on in COVID, I made the decision that I was going to allow my customers to purchase baked goods
Mm.
that would then be donated to nurses that were going into hospitals. Right. So my customers were able to make their purchase for the week. They could buy $10 worth of bread, and then they could donate an additional $10. And with their $10, I would bake 2 dozen muffins or whatever it was. I don't remember the specifics, but I would bake 2 dozen muffins. And then people who worked at different hospitals all over the state who lived in our town would come by and pick up the donations and bring them into work where they had healthcare workers that were working, you remember, crazy shifts.
Right.
And that decision, I think, probably was the first step in what ended up being our entire marketing strategy, and continues to be our marketing strategy today, which is a $0 marketing strategy and a community-based give back. So instead of buying an advertisement, we're donating product, right? And that is what started the spiral of the business growth.
Very thoughtful of you to really think about the nurses during that time. Some were not even eating during their shifts and so forth. So it's a very thoughtful decision, and also connected the hearts of the people that were sort of around that era. So amazing decision. I'm sure you made so many decisions that led you to where you are today. You
Yes,
scaled
definitely.
you scaled with most with no startup capital, which you talk about, zero marketing, zero capital. What does what does that teaches us about resourcefulness in entrepreneurship today?
Well, I think it really goes to show you that the most valuable element of your business, especially as an entrepreneur, is your time.
Mm,
Right. So the product itself, and it of course is not going to be the same for every business. I mean, some people who are in manufacturing, and that's not an option. You have to have that capital. For me, I can buy a bag of flour for $5 and I can turn that into $40.
mm,
And so if I'm not taking a cut of that $40, all I'm doing is buying back the bag of flour, then I have a $35 profit. And you turn that profit over and over again, and you start building a business, right? And the only thing that I've lost is my time. But as an entrepreneur, that's really what I should be losing is my time, right? That's what I'm putting into it. So I think there is so much to learn and gather, because I think oftentimes people think about, I want to start a business, but where would I get the money? Where would I get the funding? Where am I, and there's more available, I think, out there to business owners than they think. Even when it came time to purchase the cafe, interestingly enough, I had, I did get financing at that point. It was not a lot of financing, but I got financing for my bakery build. And I had signed the loan paperwork for the business, the bakery financing, maybe 6 or 7 days before I got the phone call about the cafe purchase. So in no way could I go back and get more financing at that point. I was lucky to have the stuff I had. I was a brand new business. Um, so I couldn't go back in and ask for an additional loan. But instead of just saying, well, I won't be able to do it, I asked the owner if she would owner finance it for me. And
mm.
as it turns out, in this situation, that worked out fine. So, I bought it from her directly. We didn't go through a bank. We just used a lawyer. And, I just make payments to her. I don't make profit off of it right now, but I will,
Right. It's right. It
someday.
will happen sometime. Exactly.
So just because I didn't have the means to do it at that moment doesn't mean that it's not possible. And sometimes you just need to ask the right questions.
Mm. You're very creative. I must give you that. Coming up with ideas, just trying to make things work. And I think that really shows your entrepreneurship spirit. As you expand from the cottage bakery to multi locations, what were some unexpected growing pains you faced or still facing?
For me, I think probably, and I would say this is probably the case for most small business owners that have decided to expand, is that one of the biggest things that you learn is that the amount of time you spend on human resources and employee management is something that nothing can prepare you for. I had this vision of myself skipping into my bakery in the morning with donning my little apron and baking my bread off. And I find that I actually spend most of my time on the phone with ADP and trying to make sure my licensing is all correct and trying to make sure that everyone's getting along and that everybody's got the time off that they need, and trying to keep your employees happy, trying to make sure that people are doing the job correctly, and just trying to foster those relationships within your business. We talk about community on a scale outside of the business, but the community inside of the business is just as important, if not more important. We have fostered a culture inside our business that is the reason that it runs as well as it does. The folks that are running my business for me, they share my vision, they share my passion, and that's something that is so incredibly important. But managing that group of passionate employees is a full-time job. in addition to the several other full-time jobs that you take on when you become an entrepreneur. I gave a speech recently to a group at the Small Business Summit in Connecticut here, and I had said in that speech, I said, when I bought this business and I started working as an entrepreneur, I found out that I no longer was just a baker. I am also an electrician and an
Right.
IT person, and I am a plumber, and I keep a wrench in the back of my car. I'm a therapist. I had no idea there were so many hats to
HR.
be had, but here we are.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is. I love that. Actually, I was in the audience listening to you, and that really inspired me. And going along what you said about the people management and culture building and entrepreneurship is such a huge thing that you shared, especially when you're starting your organization. My background in HR, I'm excited to hear that because when you speak with leaders that get it, it's exciting, and it really helps you a lot. So, Michelle, question for you. How did you evolve as a leader when your team grew from just one to maybe 40 or plus? How did you manage that process?
I mean, it's a bumpy road. you, you you make a lot of mistakes with people management. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think really the evolution of that needs to be with a great deal of humility, and being able to admit mistakes quickly and easily, because you will make them. You will make mistakes. You will bring somebody in all honesty, with the intention of firing them, and come out of the conversation in a completely different spot than you thought you were going into it. It's sometimes you just don't know. And I think also in the my employees have taught me so much.
Right.
We're definitely sort of a team of underdogs. I don't believe I have anyone here on my team who has been really trained to do what they're doing. And so a lot of us are learning together. And I think you just need to have a lot of forgiveness for that, and making sure that I give people as many chances as I expect them to give me. And I think that on the other end of that, we get employees who are more dedicated. I work in the restaurant industry. It is a high transient industry. I've owned this business. I've had employees for 4 years. And I can't even tell you how proud I am to say that more than 60% of them have been there for over 3. That's unbelievable. I have dishwashers who are now managers. I have
Right.
baristas who are now shift supervisors. I have, people who started out in the depths of the business who are risen to the top.
Amazing, amazing. That speaks a lot about your leadership. Um, Being able to recognize that you're bringing talent in that needs to grow and develop, and mistakes will happen. Forgiveness. I love hearing all of those things, and it shows that your people also appreciate you. If you have over 60 plus employees that are still within the organization after 3 years, so kudos
Right.
to you on your leadership. In moments of chaos and crisis, which you this is where your business even started. What
Right.
leadership what leadership traits helped you stay grounded?
Um, so I think for me, from a leadership perspective, of course, working in the restaurant industry, and anybody who's ever spent time in the service business can understand, that there is chaos. We thrive on chaos. That's our comfort zone for most of us. We live for that chaotic rush of the day. But from a leadership standpoint, that chaos is very contradictory, because you need to embrace the chaos around you that's happening around you almost all day every day, in cycles of breakfast, lunch, and then at the same time you need to slow down your decision making process, because I think it's very, very important. I don't even respond to a negative Google review within an hour. Do you know what I mean? Like, you need to process things. You need to think about things. You need to sleep on things before you make decisions. My staff is aware of the fact that big choices come slowly from me, and that's something they've been taught to expect, so that I can make sure that I'm making the best decision possible, whether that's a staffing decision, a financing decision, an expansion decision. These are decisions that are brought about very slowly, and they're often talked about ad nauseum. We talk about things. I play very little close to the chest. I like my employees to know my craziest ideas, and I like my employees to know about them from the minute that they cross my mind,
Mm.
because I think it's important for them to be a part of the process. And that includes pretty much anything that's not confidential.
Right. I love that. And that's open communication at the highest, and transparency. And I feel like most people appreciate that. At least they have an idea. So Michelle is thinking this. Maybe we may go this direction or that direction. I think it
Right.
really opens the
Well, and I
door.
think it helps with the longevity of your employees too, because
Mm.
maybe one of my crazy ideas is something they can see themselves in.
Right. Right. Very true. Very true. Amazing. I know you talked a lot about grassroots efforts. You've built your brand on grassroots storytelling and being authentic as a leader. What does authenticity mean to you in business? How do you define it in your simplest way?
Um, I think in transparency, of course, but I think that my authenticity comes from sharing my actual excitement.
Mm.
For the most part, like when I am excited about a product or a change, or something that we're participating in, I think that it really shines through in the way that I speak about it. So, you're going to see, we believe, I believe, my staff believes that attitude is very infectious.
Yeah.
So, if I come into work and I'm super excited about whatever sandwich they made today, that spirals quickly. And it, if I'm jumping up and down saying, oh my gosh, this is the best grilled cheese I've ever had, the girls that are then selling it at the register are going to say that honestly to the customers in front of them. And just trying to make sure that that vibe, I guess, is always prevalent, and just making sure that we're leading each other with positivity and not negativity. It really, it goes such a long way of spreading in that grassroots concept, right? Like that, those vibes grow better. There's some some kind of experiment that they've done, right, on like talking to plants or
Yeah.
something. Right. And they say that, like, if you play like classical music to a plant, it will grow faster than if you play it like negative, harsh music. Or if you feed positivity to your business and your marketing efforts, your grass is going to grow a lot faster.
Exactly. Exactly. It's such a great metaphor, but it's true. There has
It
been
is.
experiment. Love that. What is one story about a customer or an employee that reminded you why you do the work that you do today?
Oh man. Huh. I guess there's so many. There's so many. Um, I mean, the employee side, there's like thousands, right? I had an employee, have an employee who, her, when she came to me, she was expecting her
Oh,
first child, and her little girl has grown up
wow.
in our business. At this point, she has 15 aunts, and we all adore her. And I remember there was an accident maybe 2 years ago, and everyone was fine, thank God. But she was in a car accident. The little girl was in a car accident with her father, and her mom was working with us. And I remember getting a phone call from our manager who was there, and all she said was, Emma was in an accident. We're leaving.
Wow.
And literally they left. Like they left. They were on the scene. My staff was on the scene before emergency vehicles. And they were on the scene to help her and to get the little girl out of the car and to bring a car seat over because they knew she wasn't going to be able to go back into the one she was in. And I remember, ordering a brand new car seat from her from Target and having one of our other staff members go and get it. And like, we brought this other car, like, it was like just an automatic jump into action. And I think that's the kind of, environment you're looking for with your employees. And then at the same time, so similar, I remember coming in I was driving my daughter home from school, and I got a phone call from my office or my work that said that a woman had been having lunch there, and she had collapsed at lunch.
Wow.
And she was an older woman, and I think she just had blood sugar. She was fine, but she had collapsed. They had called 911, so I of course immediately went directly back. So I came back over, and I got there as they were loading her into an ambulance, and she was there with two of her friends who had been visiting from out of the country. And, um, I sat with them while they took her, and they were all older. They didn't have phones. So I ended up, we had another customer that was there, and she brought them over to the hospital. I stopped and got some flowers for the woman and brought those over to the hospital. And just kind of hoped, I mean, I didn't know them personally. So, sure enough, maybe 2 weeks later, I feel like her name was like Lois or Louise or something like that. And she called and she wanted to talk to me. And I remember her picking up the phone, and she was like, it was so nice what you did. And she was like, and we had such a great time anyways. And she said, and I had been waiting and waiting to take my friends to visit you because I had told them your story, and I had been telling them about your business for all this time, and they had been visiting from out of the country. And as we had gone back to talk about the whole situation that had come up with them, she said, it's just so touching.
Right.
I didn't know this woman prior to this, but her first thing that she wanted to do when her friends were there was come and show them my business and tell them my story and show them what I had built, because she was so proud of it.
Wow.
Which is so amazing to me, because I don't know her. This isn't
Right.
my grandmother. This isn't, but she's proud of me like my grandmother is proud of me. And like, I think that kind of almost disconnected but still connected story. And when I hear people talking, my office is tucked in behind our dining room area, and one of my favorite things to do is to quietly sit back there while I'm working and listen to the people in my dining room who I don't know tell other people my story.
Wow. It's so impactful and so emotional. And it's relatable too for, the way you responded for the help that maybe she needed at the time. It's a testament to the story behind why you even started your business in the first place, which is helping people. So it's a full circle. Thank you so much for sharing that. It's amazing. Michelle, as a woman entrepreneur, what barriers did you have to sort of break through, and how did you do it? We always hear there's a little bit of a barrier for women in entrepreneurship. What's your story?
I did not find myself struck with any barriers in creating my business. I think that the barriers that I had and continue to have are completely within myself, in that I struggle to balance where I should be almost all of the time, right?
Yes.
I feel like I should be with my business. I feel like I should be with my staff. And I also feel like I should be with my kids. And I feel like I should be at my house. Like I should be walking my dog. And then at the same time, you have to take care of yourself in there somewhere as well. So I, while I'm worried about the fact that I should be at my business and also worried about the fact that I should be with my kids, I'm also worried about the fact that, did I eat breakfast? Did I eat protein? Did I
Right.
have water? Have I gone for a walk today? When is the last time I took a shower? You're trying to balance so many things, and I certainly would not ever say that, in my home the expectation is that I need to handle everything, but the expectation that I've set for myself is
Mm,
that I do. And that's wrong. And that's my own problem that I need to deal with. But I think it's probably relatable for a lot of women, and that they feel like, okay, I can have this entrepreneurship journey, but I can only have it if I can handle everything else at the same time. And that is a very high standard to set for yourself.
very true. Well said. Trying to juggle all of those things and also being mindful of your needs is extremely challenging. And I feel like you're on the right track though. You'll find a balance that works for you. But well said, well said. What advice would you give to young women trying to build something meaningful from scratch? What would be that one advice?
I mean, so the obvious, if it doesn't scare you, you're doing it wrong, right? It should scare you. It's scary.
Yeah.
All of the risks that you take, all the decisions you make, they're scary. Not everything's going to work, and you've got to be ready to admit that. I think sometimes for women that's harder to admit.
Mm-hmm.
So there's something to be said about that, but you need to have support, and women need to understand that you can't do it alone. You really can't. You might think you can, but you can't. You need people around you. I wouldn't be where I am if I didn't have, my husband by me every step of the way. I mean, he might not know how to make bread, but he's there, right? He's walking around the bags of flour that I had in my kitchen for a year. Or my kids, telling me that they're supporting what I'm doing, and that they are proud to see what's happening with my business. Or my parents who, dropped everything and sold their house in Florida to come back to Connecticut and help me with my kids and my business so that I could do this. You need all of that support. You need the friends who are going to pick up your kids for you because you can't get there. You need the friends who've already done this and need to talk you off the ledge, because for the ninth time this week, I don't know what I'm going to do tomorrow morning. Like, you need all of those people in your life. And I think I recently was at an event, I think it was for the Connecticut Restaurant Association, and one of the gentlemen I was talking to had been following my story, and he said, I just don't know as if I've ever seen a restaurant that has built the network that you have. Not the community, but the network that I have. And I think that is really, really important, and something that people don't recognize. They think about networking as going to a business after hours and just meeting people, but that's not what it's about. It's about making the connections with people who may not be able to help you at that moment, but maybe you can help them, and then maybe you need their help later on. I can't think of a scenario right now that could come up where I don't have one person I could call
Mm.
to help me through it. And that network is how you go from a one person operation to the business that I have today.
Amazing. I have goosebumps as you're speaking, by the way. When you, when you mentioned you can't think of one problem that you can't call someone for that support. And that's a true testament of the community that you have.
Right.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I know this one would be a little bit of a funny question, but if your business was a recipe, what would the ingredients be?
You would obviously have to have some passion in there. I think that the staff is probably pretty far at the top. Community, of course, needs to be part of it. And I think the risk and the grit that goes behind it is probably the follow-up ingredients.
Absolutely, absolutely. I agree with you. And we're taking notes on those things. What legacy would you hope for the Flower Girl leaves? Not just the business, but the force of the community. What legacy do you hope that your business will leave behind?
I think that our marketing concept, which is to not spend money on marketing, but
Mm,
instead to spend money investing in our community, whether it's, sponsoring a lacrosse team or giving to a silent auction or providing cupcakes to the graduation. I think that strategy is something that I don't know if it ever existed, but if it did, it's been so lost in translation with the way businesses operate now. And um, the bigger your budget, the less you probably can spend all of it on community give back. But I wish that more businesses, and I hope that our strategy and the platform that I'm building for our business allows more businesses to see the benefit of operating like that. Because the $150 that I spend to give uniforms to the T-ball team comes back to me 150 times more than my ad in the newspaper. And I think that has been lost. Companies look at community give back as a tax advantage, and it's really so much more than that. And I think that they need to understand the value, whether you're a big business or a small business, of trying to be involved in helping your community. And I hope that maybe watching the Flower Girls success and then understanding that we've done it without spending any money on advertising ever is is something that will inspire other people to try to embrace that, even if it's not entirely, a little bit more.
exactly. Nice. I love that advice. And I think seeing the success that you have is definitely probably will be shared mostly with a lot of people who are also starting their businesses and will sort of take that mantle and support the community as much as possible. I guess what's something you wish someone had told you before you started this
I
journey?
wish somebody had told me about the amount of human resources that was going to be involved. No, I mean, I think I probably would have benefited from hearing a little bit more about how hard it is, because
Mm,
it is really hard. It's really hard. It's harder than you think it's going to be. And when you start off, you feel like you're so ready for whatever is coming your way. And but the problem is that when you're owning a small business and you're trying to do best for the business and yourself and your team, it continues to be hard. Like, there's great days and there's hard days, and sometimes they're both together. But the challenges don't go away. You don't ever really get ahead. There's the saying that full staff is a myth. Like, it doesn't exist. As soon as you think you're there, you're not anymore. Um, so I think I had a picture in my head that I was always like right at the top, right? I'm right at the top of the hill, and then it's going to be easier. And but it's never easier. It's just better, and it's just more satisfying. It's not, but it's never easier. The challenges just change.
very true. Very true. Very true. And that is such a great reflection for all of us listening or anyone listening who may be interested in becoming an entrepreneur or owning a business. It doesn't get easier, but you get better. I love
Right.
that advice. You get better. You get better at what you're doing with the
Right.
experience you have. And our final question for you, leading to the end of the show: if everything were to end tomorrow, which we don't want your business to ever end, what part of your journey would you think you hold closest to your heart?
What I've shown my children, right?
Mm,
Like, my kids, my kids stood in my kitchen with me 4 years ago, and I remember us having a conversation about, like, can you imagine if I ever had an actual bakery, and having them be able to watch this happen is is so invaluable. Like, people say, that they'll do anything for their kids, and, like, sometimes I wonder if this is the anything. Like, because I'm showing them these values, and I'm showing them, and that, that spreads quickly. And it's not just them, it's the people, the kids around them, their friends have seen the same thing.
Right, right. Which
So
is
I
so
think that's probably the most important part.
amazing. I love it. Love your story. Thank you so much, Michelle, for being on our show.
Thank
We
you.
appreciate your words of wisdom, your journey, the ups, the downs, what led you, the community that's behind you, that's supporting this amazing business you have started and growing. How should people connect with you? And do you have any final words before we close?
um so our website, we have contact information on our website, and I do have a LinkedIn account that I use for business. um Social media, as much as our business is built on social media, is not the way to get in touch with me. I have a whole team of people that manages my social media accounts now, and it's not something that I spend a lot of personal time on. My time is very valuable to me, and it's definitely taken up very quickly.
Yes.
So I think that email is excellent. I have an amazing assistant who works with me, and she helps manage my calendar and my email to make sure that I am giving everybody the attention that they're looking for. Because
Exactly.
sometimes they do get lost. So, but I really enjoy telling my story. I enjoy speaking about my story. It is something that I have been doing more professionally recently. So, if anyone listening is looking to have motivational speaking done in their business, it is something that I really am very passionate about. I think there is a lot to learn from my story. And I think that I do a pretty good job telling it. So I think it's a good option for any industry, to be honest, to hear a story about how we've grown this business and how we run this business.
Thank you. Exactly. We fully support you on that initiative, and we'll follow your journey and see where all your speaking engagements will end up. Again, thank you on behalf of Umatta Consulting. Thanks for giving us your time, your story, and we'll love to see what else is in your near future. Everyone else listening, thank you for being here. Have a good day.
Thank you.